that's what this process is about. The common application, the essays, is about showing their best selves. And I hope that they will take everything in that you're putting out today. And when I see them in 2 weeks, I'm going to see some great Common App essays.
Sure.
So you have 100 now, Julian. Take it away.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much. I know it's still afternoon in your neck of the woods. I'm currently streaming to you live from Washington, D.C., so I have the blinds set down so I get that prime lighting. So it's good evening on my end. I definitely appreciate your taking the time to join us today. I was really touched to receive an invitation from some staff members in your school district to speak with you on the college essay process. I will start by saying that I am in no way the end-all be-all expert on the topic, but after a couple years of working in Yale's Office of Undergraduate Admissions, I do have some tips and some insights I would love to share with you all that could be applicable to not only the common application essay or the personal statement on that application platform, but advice that could translate to college essay writing in general. So without further ado, I will find my slide deck and get started. So today we're going to cover a couple of different things. We're going to talk about what the essays achieve within the context of an application, the purpose that the essay has in the entire admissions process. We're going to go over some of the prompts of the common application that are the same as last year's prompts, so there weren't any curveballs thrown your way this year, thankfully. I'm going to give a brief overview of the process that I would recommend in terms of choosing a topic to write about. Then we will lead into some of the writing mechanics you should keep in mind as you start putting those thoughts down on paper or typing it out in your virtual document. But hopefully, after having this conversation, after you're hearing me wax poetic in so many different ways about the merits of an essay, the things you should keep in mind, I hope we can have a pretty open dialogue. So please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen to submit questions as they arise during my presentation. And I will set aside ample time at the very end to answer your questions live. We've also enabled chat. You should feel free to use the chat as you see fit. I see that we already have a nice little dialogue going with some staff members who are in the mix. So yeah, feel free to use the chat if there are any reasons for you to communicate to me or any others there. But know that as your questions come up, you should submit them to the Q&A function and we will get to them closer to the end. But we will basically spend the next hour together talking all about essays. What I hope to really drive home is that the essays don't need to do all of the heavy lifting when it comes to the entire application process. My mom didn't go to school in the United States, so when I went through my own college application process, I had to learn a lot of different things anew. This was a really daunting process, and the part of the application process that was most intimidating to me personally was the essay. How would it be conceivable to capture one's entire essence and vibrancy in 600 words or less? It was very easy for me. Just kidding. It was the hardest thing because I was that student who definitely was of the mindset that there would be this perfect approach to writing college essays. And there was a formula that I just needed to discover, and it was out there. And while I couldn't get it at home from my own parents who went to school and college in the States, after leafing through enough pamphlets and guidebooks, I would be able to discover that secret sauce, the perfect approach to a college essay. And quite frankly, it doesn't exist. And something that really clicked for me was thinking about how the essays are communicating something really specific. And they are doing so in concert with the other materials of a college application. Now, the diagram that you see on your screen now is a pretty general schematic of how essays could work in the context of a holistic or a whole person review process. The exception to this visual are the essays that you submit for scholarship opportunities. So there may be instances in which you write an essay, and based on that essay and that material alone, you will be awarded either opportunity to join a program or scholarship money that you could put toward your education in some way. This visual is really pertaining to a whole person review. And what is hopefully helpful about seeing the essays alongside these 4 other materials is that you will introduce yourself to an admissions reader or an admissions office through different materials. What we gauge from an academic record varies greatly from what we come to know about a student through their testing. Every admissions officer who employs a holistic review of applications are driven by this idea that every single application will come together to bring to the fore very unique strengths and qualities that you alone present. For most schools, the most important thing to understand about an applicant is their academic preparation. While there are a wide range of selectivity rates across the country, across the thousands of schools that are in the US. The biggest question and the most important priority across the board will be, is this student being set up for success should they be admitted to this school? Have they had the experiences thus far in order to not only do the work within this environment, but also thrive? Is this a place with all of its academic resources that will drive that student's flourishment? Is this an environment that's really going to nurture this specific student's needs? So an academic record is one of the top priorities within the entire context of a college application. Next, schools may be interested in knowing your activities. And I know that it can sometimes feel like a rat race, right? Who am I if not my achievements? What do I have to show for all of the years that I've been a community member? These are really natural instincts and impulses that you may feel, but I definitely want to put a break on that type of thinking. When schools ask for a student's extracurriculars or commitments, they're vaguely thinking about what is this student doing outside of the classroom that is really meaningful to them. Because so many schools, especially those with residential dimensions to their undergraduate experience and student life, they want to know, how will the student engage our community? What kinds of activities will be of interest to this student? And how does that compare to what we offer on our campus? Through the activities and academic preparation demonstrated by the records, the transcripts, the grades, that will help the admissions officer to identify a student's fit for that school. Now, the recommendation letters work in a completely different way altogether. They shed light on what a student is like within their classroom environment, and those instructors who write on your behalf will be the folks who will not only sing your praises, they will highlight your different qualities and the strengths you bring to the classroom experience, not only for yourself, but also for others. Knowing that so many schools that may be on your radar are those that have small class sizes, or they may be large lectures predominantly in their course offerings, admissions officers need to know what environments have you been in thus far, and what has worked best for you? What qualities do you bring to the table? That's what helps the recommendations really come to light. Now, I'm going to skip over essays and then talk about testing. This is a new paradigm altogether. We've talked And you all know very acutely about the radical disruption that this pandemic and the political, racial, and social unrest in the US has had on students now, and how it has been over the last few months, and how it will directly impact the learning experience going forward. So one of the ways that institutions both near and far have reacted to these radical disruptions is to change their testing policy. I've been seeing a very fortunate wave of schools opt to go test optional this year, because testing, while it is a very important metric in so many schools' evaluation process, it can impose unforeseen barriers when it comes to the college application process, especially when in-person testing and evaluation is more complicated than it has ever been. Now, you see how you can present yourself in so many different ways through so many different materials. The essays within the context of a complete application to so many schools is the most personal part of the entire application. It is the part that by the time you apply or are getting ready to apply to schools, it's the material that you have the most control over. And so while you may be feeling in certain ways some anxiety or some pressure to craft the most perfect essay, I would invite you to think about the essay in a different way, to not seek out perfection, but to seek out authenticity and being your best self. Because this is the opportunity uniquely presented to you as an applicant to put yourself in direct dialogue with an admissions officer, an application reader, and even in some cases, a whole host of folks from the institutions to which you apply. If you are in your final couple years of high school, the vast majority of work in order to apply to colleges and universities is already done. You've taken classes, you've received grades, even if they're pass-fail. And so the bulk of the work truly has already been accomplished. So you should feel empowered to then hone in on this precise element and tool within the application process, because this is the part that you have the most agency in now. It's helpful to know what admissions officers are seeking when reviewing essays. Why are we even asking for students to put all of this time and devote so much energy into a material that can seem really nebulous, that can take so many different directions? And like I said earlier, it's because this is the most personal. We hear a student's voice the most through the essays versus even what a recommendation letter can offer us. So these few bullet points are some of, but not all of, the things that admissions officers will ascertain when reviewing an essay. We want to know a little bit about your background. What are circumstances in your life that have impacted who you are today? And along the way, up until this point, what are certain factors that come to mind when you think about what's important to you? So we want to get to understand, in the most general sense possible, your background. We also want to know about formative experiences. What are key moments in your life that have shaped you most greatly? You obviously contain multitudes, and there are so many different experiences that you can choose from. And we're going to talk a little bit about selecting a topic later on in this presentation. But if there are key moments that you think have made an indelible mark on who you are today, they may be something that you consider writing about directly in your essay. Since these are academic institutions that are providing students with immense resources to learn and interrogate the parameters of their minds, these essays are also great materials in order to demonstrate what your own intellectual energy or verve is like. How do you think? What are the questions that you have about the world or different topics of interest to you? What questions do you tend to ponder? How do you nurture your mind on a regular basis? We are essentially, as admissions officers, deciding which of these students within an applicant pool are those who we want to invest in as students. And when you strip away all of the nuances about what a student can provide, I would say, going back to the transcript and the academic records as a top priority within a holistic review process, a student's intellect should definitely play a role in the essay, whether it's through the topic chosen or, in some other cases, the approach that a student takes in order to bring funny, casual, informal topics to life. So you don't have to play smart, but you definitely play the role of being smart. But we definitely always want to know, what is a student's intellect like by the time that they are applying to an institution. Now, with that said, I want to balance out that pretty lofty ivory tower comment with this next bullet point. Admissions officers don't expect students to be fully formed, self-actualized individuals by the time that they apply to their schools. We want to know about your interests and commitments from the vantage point of a teenager, someone who's young and, someone who doesn't have to spend all of their time reading consumer reports or scholastic articles and scholarly journals. We want to know how you spend your time and how you commit your energies and talents. So I'll get to authenticity a little bit later on, but to balance out this very erudite intellect that I definitely was speaking to moments ago, the essays are a really great opportunity to also just showcase what do you like to do and what your interests are. An important part of that is also how you've been able to interact with other people, be they your family members and the folks who you consider to be in your innermost circle. Maybe it's your chosen family, maybe it's people that you volunteer on the weekend with, or you compete with on your debate team or your robotics team. So many schools that have a holistic and whole person review process will want to know about your relationships because of how students relate to others on their respective campuses, and how, on the one hand, it is so important to have faculty members of all these different disciplines being the instructors to lead the acquisition of knowledge. The folks that you will call your peers within the classrooms, in so many respects, are just as important. So the question remains, what kind of person are we bringing to our campus, and how will they relate to other people? So we also want to gauge your connection to others in these essays as well. And now the last part, your idiosyncrasies. We want to understand the most genuine you. We want to understand the authentic self you are willing to share with us. Now, if you're funny, and if you are someone who prides yourself in making people laugh and bringing joy into other people's lives through humor, please, by all means, be funny. Now, if you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Don't try to be anyone you're not. Because admissions officers are very skilled readers with critical eyes, they will very easily perceive and pick up on ways that a student is posturing and showcasing their own strengths in ways that don't really seem to be triangulated in any other part of the application. So in other words, don't try to be quirky for quirky's sake. Just think about what makes you unique, and then relay that information onto the essay and into the different essay materials that you craft. Now, in order to bring this all to light, as I've been thinking and preparing for this session, interestingly enough, I've been thinking about the Earth and plate tectonic theory. Now, this is a scientific theory generated from the 20th century, and I hope that if, for whatever reason, my Earth and Oceanographic Science professor, Dr. Emily Peterman, is watching, I hope to make you proud, but I will warn you that I am no expert on geology. But I think that if you think about yourself as a plate tectonic, you could start to realize why the essays are important and why we ask for students to present so many different materials. So there's this theory out there that there are 7 to 8 major plates on the Earth, and they are moving. They are moving as we speak, and they have been moving for years and years. And these plates exist on the lithosphere, so they are the outermost plates of the Earth's crust. And when studying geology, geologic history, and plate tectonic movements, scientists must come to understand how they have fit together, their different movements, and so they may zero in on the Caribbean plate. They are asking themselves, when did the Caribbean plate come to be? So that's the most macro scale. What are the parameters of this plate? How does it relate to other plates like the Cocos plate, the Nazca plate, the South American plate, the North American plate? And so scientists will actually start to interrogate the contours of the Caribbean plate and see how it may have friction with, go under other plates. So they not only look at the plate itself, they look at the parameters, and then some of the most important work that scientists do within the field are, they try to identify the makeup of each plate, of each tectonic plate. What kind of rock predominantly makes up the Caribbean plate? And so they actually go from the most macro, looking at the world from this really general view, and they go as myopically as the different minerals and rocks that make up this entire plate, because what happens on the most granular level affects the plate tectonic movement patterns globally. This is all to say that the essays could be thought of as one of several plates that you have within a complete application to the schools that are on your college list. We want to understand how when you present your skills and talents through your extracurricular commitments or activities, how do they coincide with the other plate, if you will, that is your recommendation letters? How does that then fit in and impact the way that you write your essays? You can also think of yourself as a plate. We want to know your identity and background, this kind of very general sense of who you are. We want to understand how you are interacting with the other folks within your sphere. And then on the most granular level, we want to understand what makes you you. What are the different quirks? What are the different minerals that make up your personality? Now, I will pause to say that if you have stuck with me through this clunky plate tectonics metaphor, I commend you and I thank you for your patience. And if there are any budding geologists in the crowd who want to refine my metaphor, please do so. In thinking about what admissions officers are wanting to ascertain and gain from reading your essays, and in thinking about how the essays can work in concert with the other materials, you can actually find all of that information in the types of questions that are posed to you as applicants. So many people can get really intimidated by the college application process because they think they have to posture. They think they have to be someone they're not. They think they have to put on a mask or put on a brave face in order to convince their reader that they are someone that they should take interest in. But as much as those are justifiable and very natural concerns, I definitely want to empower all of you to think about this opportunity as a time to review all of the questions that may be posed to you in an application, and have these questions catalyze deep introspection. These questions shouldn't be challenges to who you are. They shouldn't be ways that you are thinking, oh, I'm not doing enough, because and these aren't questions that are posed in order to trick you, or add any challenge to your access to colleges and universities. They should be thought of as opportunities for you to put your best foot forward. And like I said earlier, to be yourself. So fortunately, organizations like the Common Application and the Questbridge application and the Coalition application, and for the few schools that use the Universal application, they work alongside staff at the secondary school level and work with folks at colleges and universities to come up with questions that they think will help the widest array of students present themselves adequately in essay form. What I mean by that is all of the things that we've already reviewed thus far can in some ways be found in the prompts that, say, the Common App presents to you and offers you all as applicants. So take some of these, for example. I'll read them quickly just to give you a sense of the variety that exists and the options that you have at your disposal. And hopefully these questions will start ringing some bells and seem familiar with the information that we've already covered. You know, number one, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, please share your story. Now, it charts some specific topics that you may be interested in exploring, but what makes this a really good question is that it ends on a really open-ended way. Please share your story couldn't be more general. The second question, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, or what did you learn from the experience? Now, I've heard from a lot of students that they've been told by a number of folks to basically hone in on their own trauma, and they need to show the great deal of trials and tribulations in their life in order to seem more enticing to an admissions reader, because that kind of traumatic experience is more savory to the folks who will be reviewing your application. This is not a time to hide from your trauma or experiences and challenges that have deeply affected you. This could very well be an opportunity to reflect really critically about things that have posed great problems to you and demonstrate how you've overcome them. So if you do decide to answer a question like this one, I recommend demonstrating to your reader your reaction and how you navigated the problem. Now, if you just define the problem and leave it at that, that may leave the reader with a number of questions that you need to answer, but you didn't within the prompt you submitted. The third question, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? This is a great opportunity to show off your life of the mind. How do you process mentally different topics that come onto your radar? I'll leave it at that. I mean, I think as pithy as the prompt is worded, my explanation of it should follow accordingly. The fourth, describe a problem you've solved or a problem you'd like to solve. It can be an intellectual challenge, a research query, an ethical dilemma, anything of personal importance, no matter the scale. Explain its significance to you and what steps you took or could be taken to identify a solution. So many schools are amassing all of these different objects and creating these different research facilities and collecting these world-class minds in order to generate innovation, in order to propel humanity forward. And I told you I would be waxing poetic. But when you look at the missions of different schools, they are just as lofty. They want to inspire students who will then in turn inspire the world. And so if there's a topic or a problem that you have tackled, whether it's through your academic work or scholarship, or it's through the actions you've taken in your spare time, you might want to consider writing about that and answering a question like that. Again, it goes back to the formative experiences or the talents or commitments you may have that the admissions officers may be interested in learning more about through your essays. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and new understanding of yourself or others. Now, something I really like about that question is its recognition and its centering of change over time. I love my job as an admissions officer because by and large, I am not meeting self-actualized folks. I am not meeting people who have all the answers by the time of our mutual introduction. Instead, I am meeting students who have been exposed to different ways of thinking by taking courses across the academic spectrum, and they are ready to take their learning to the next level. And when students do find themselves on different college campuses or in different university programs, they are actively investing in further personal development. So a question like this can nicely provide an admissions officer the blueprint that you define for yourself, that brings to light the changes you've already experienced in your life. Knowing that a student's undergraduate years may very much catalyze tremendous personal and intellectual growth, admissions officers may be keenly interested in how you've grown thus far and how do you reflect on those experiences. And so if there is something like an event or an accomplishment that you think, oh man, that totally changed my trajectory, you might want to answer a prompt like this one. Now the last two, the penultimate question. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? This one kind of falls squarely into the category of your life of the mind. There are some schools that absolutely attract very scholarly types, those who want to spend a lot of their time pondering. So if that is the kind of person you see yourself as, this sixth topic could be of particular interest to you, and I might consider thinking pretty deeply about answering this question. Now, number 7 is a great example of how institutions as aged and powerful as the Common App will still give space to the great variety of perspectives that they don't even know about. So share an essay of any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. We've covered a lot of ground in the aforementioned 6 prompts. This 7th prompt, from what I know, is a response to folks who have said, while these other prompts cover a lot of ground, there are still others who don't feel best served by these specific parameters. So this is basically a choose your own adventure, blank slate, as open-ended as possible type question. So if you are not satisfied and not energized by answering the previous questions, you should feel free to take the liberty to answer prompt number 7 or any type of essay prompt that is as open-ended as this one. Now, I've talked a little bit about how the essays work with other materials, the things that admissions officers are hoping to achieve when reviewing your essays. But let's get into how you can then leverage this knowledge into your actual approach to writing, crafting these essays. this is probably the most daunting part for me when I was applying to schools for myself. I was thinking there are so many different things to talk about. And after looking at these prompts, I'm like, I could take so many different directions. And I want to definitely validate some feelings of dizziness and feelings of being overwhelmed by how vast the options may seem. So I would just take a breather. And when choosing a topic, what you want to do is think of it as a funnel, a funneling system. So I would choose a topic that's really general, something that you think about, something that's important to you, definitely something that's personal. Take astrology, for example. Then you want to narrow your scope quite a bit and pick something within that general topic that genuinely resonates with you. So for example, the best qualities of Capricorns and Scorpios. See, this essay so far takes the really wide-ranging mythos of astrology and all of its intricacies with different houses and placements and qualities, and it narrows the scope so that it only focuses on the best qualities of 2 of the dozen or so signs. And the bottom line after choosing a topic should always be its personal connection to you, because the essay is always going to be, unequivocally speaking, the most personal part of your application. So how does this topic connect to the person behind the essay? So if I were choosing a topic, I might select a title that reads along the lines of, why am I like this? On being a Capricorn sun with the Scorpio moon and rising. So what this pretty cheeky and a la mode topic hopes to suggest is that you should basically go from this wide, start narrowing your focus in order to identify the things that are of most interest to you, and then the most specific you should get is how this pretty vast topic relates to you, who you are now, who you have been previously, and the person you hope to become in your future, and probably through the process of going to college and taking different courses. So whatever the topic may be, it can have a purview that goes in different chronological dimensions. It could be backward looking, it could take a pause and be as mindful and present as you see fit. You can also vision cast a bit. You can also imagine what your life could be like given the aspirations you have at this moment in time. I hope that makes sense. I know we've been dealing with the cosmos, but I hope these are very tangible steps you can take to select a topic that you think will be best for you. Also on a lighter note, when I was thinking about this presentation, I was like, oh man, I can't shake the image of SpongeBob sitting down to write an essay, and after hours of putting pencil to paper, coming up with this very beautiful article. I don't know if you all watch SpongeBob, but this is an image from SpongeBob. And this is also to communicate to you all that even after deciding on what topic to use when answering any of these prompts, actually putting your reflections on paper can take a lot of time. So I recommend just sitting or being still and thinking. And then after you've done that thinking, think some more. It could be helpful to carry around a little notepad or a little journal, a moleskin. I don't know how literary and artsy you are, but even if you're not, document between now and when you decide to submit your college applications. Jot down some of your ideas as they come about, because they could serve as the genesis for essays that you could use. I remember when I was in my senior year of college, there was a formative experience that I had, and it encapsulated so many of the things I had been brainstorming. And it was in that moment that I rushed home, went back to my journal that I was using to take all of these notes over weeks and months. And I thought, wow, this really does crystallize all of the reflections I've basically been accumulating over a long period of time. And so tracking those notes, tracking your thought patterns, and documenting how your mind has wandered when contemplating and musing over these different college prompts could end up being a worthwhile venture by the time you actually have to sit down and type out or write out some of your essay responses. I've been saying this quite a bit over the short 45 minutes we've already spent, but the best way to approach the college application process is just to be yourself. For a number of reasons. I mean, that's the person that we are hoping to invite onto our campuses. And based on the other materials that we have at our disposal, we can tell when students are trying to be someone they're not. We read enough essays to know this doesn't sound like this person, and this doesn't sound like a typical teenager or a typical person applying to our school. So while there may be a cacophony of other voices in the room, and you may be hearing a lot of different advice from a lot of different places, including my advice, while you're sitting and then thinking some more, drown out those voices and listen to yourself and prioritize yourself, because what this process should be, more so than anything else, is an opportunity for you to convey who you are and you alone are at this moment in time. A lot of folks, when talking about college essays, like to warn about really bad topics. And while that may have some legitimacy, and while that may be very helpful to some of you, I don't want to discount that. I don't really like that advice. I don't think that there are any bad topics. Some really common topics that folks like to think of as really bad are like the cross-country essay, where you talk about, learning the merits of hard work and teamwork in an individualized setting through a cross-country commitment, or an essay on failing a test. Now, I've read very good essays about failing a test, and I've read very bad essays about failing a test. There are good, bad, everything in between varieties of responses under the same umbrella topic. So as long as you make your reflections unique, you can bring to life a topic that may not really work for other people, but it works really well for you. Next, don't try to cover too much. Think really critically about what is already being communicated about you through the other materials or through the other essay responses that you may deliver. I often get the question, if I really have a passion that I want to talk about in 3 different essay responses, is that okay? The answer is yes. As long as you are providing new information in each of these different essays, go ahead. Talk about 3D printing plants and your obsession with CRISPR all you want, as long as you are showcasing a different facet of yourself in each and every one of those responses. Also, don't feel like you need to talk about and bring the reader up to speed on the entire history of scientific innovation within the topic of CRISPR. You can choose a topic, again, a specific circumstance, and then your personal connection to it, which in the grand scheme of things may cover only a sliver of that topic, of the entire cross-section of that topic. But as long as it's personal, the admissions reader will be very grateful for the work that went into crafting that response. And you don't have to feel as if your essay needs to be the most comprehensive possible. Along that same vein, write in some depth. If you have another reader take a glance at your essay and they can't really list a set of maybe even 3 details about what you've shared, and you've actually spent a lot of time just focusing on one idea without really bringing to light any of its nuances, think about deepening your level of detail a little bit more. And of course, proofread, proofread, proofread. You don't want an admissions reader to discredit you because you didn't take another look or a third look or a fourth look at your essay. You don't want an unforced answer to sour the great impression you are making to an admissions reader or an application evaluator. Some resources that are absolutely at your disposal. Now, I've just listed 4 different resources. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. William Zinsser's On Writing Well is this pretty canonical text that has had so many different editions, and there's an entire section on personal narratives. I have found that excerpt of this text to be very helpful in framing how personal essays could be effective. But then the book as a whole is just really interesting in its expertise on syntax and semantics and other rhetorical devices. So for those of you in AP Lang, or have taken AP Lang or any type of English class where you explore and interrogate writing mechanics, you would get a total kick out of On Writing Well. The Purdue Online Writing Lab is a website that's easily accessible for a whole host of reasons pertaining to writing, but they do have some insights on personal statements that I have found helpful in the past. Admissions offices aren't trying to shroud this process in even more mystique. So go to the websites of the schools that you're interested in. See what they have to say about the essays. This isn't just a plug for Yale, because we do put on our website an entire section of our website dedicated to advice on putting together your application, but also specifically the essays. There are so many other schools that also answer very common questions about application materials. And lastly, your high school faculty and staff. I cannot overestimate ever or overemphasize the great wealth of expertise at your disposal. You all are blessed, #blessed, to attend school at either Mountain View or Los Altos High School, because you are supported by some of the best educators I know, full stop. These are folks whose hearts are in the right place, whose expertise is second to none. So when you have questions, go to the people who are ready and willing to give you some support, whether it's in your essay writing process or otherwise. And if I can get on my soapbox, and Angela already knew I would do this and expected as much, I'm sure. The fact that you do have such great, credible resources within your public school system, I really do want to warn against the impulse of working with independent educational consultants and the folks who may have had a couple years in a selective admissions process and market themselves as industry experts. The day I leave Yale admissions office and the day that I no longer have access to the admissions committee room, personally, I think, I'm hanging my coat and I am exiting the conversation, because the realm of education is remarkably nimble. And because it's a world in which access and equity are prioritized and centered, schools will change their policies, their approaches, their general messages according to how students and other stakeholders within education should be served. The last thing before I'll get off my soapbox. Last summer, I was in a professional development exercise that had to do with a case study on folks who summit Mount Everest. And one of the most important takeaways within this very interesting conversation for me was that we should always listen to the Sherpa, the folks who are on the ground working most closely and the longest with the task at hand, or with the communities that are most deeply impacted by a mission or a culture. And if I had to identify any Sherpas within the college admissions process, it's absolutely the folks who are working as the college and career center specialists and coordinators and the high school counselors that you have access to. So that's the last thing I'll say about independent consultants and how you don't need them. What you need to know is yourself, and that you will be supported in a number of ways by the folks around you and by the information that is published and readily accessible online. Now, I've covered a lot of information. Hopefully a lot of that has been sticking and resonates with you. I will then move over to the Q&As and answer some of your questions. So the first one comes from Chris. Thanks, Chris. Would you recommend journaling anything tangentially related to the college essay? Absolutely. Like I said earlier, and maybe you submitted this question a little early on and I got to it a little bit later, I definitely think it could be really helpful to journal and to keep a live document, whether it's on your notes on your phone or on your computer or in an actual IRL journal. I definitely think it could be helpful because as you are exposed to new ideas and have different experiences and different conversations, you could augment your understanding of a topic that you started to think about months ago. So journaling is absolutely a really great thing. I would recommend, no matter the type of thinker you are, no matter how you typically process new information, either internally using, taking a pause and meditating on an idea, or externally by writing it down. No matter the type of thinker you are, I think actually keeping a journal is a good idea. Okay, the next question from Carter. Thanks, Carter. So the college essay requires insight as to why I can thrive and what I can bring to the table. Is that all? No, it's not all. It can communicate so many different things. By selecting a topic that resonates most with you, I would follow that line of argument. So take for example, describe this sixth question. Describe a topic that makes you lose all track of time. You should answer that question and not feel like you need to force any other elements of who you are into the mix. And so if you're like, I just want to talk about how I love to think about celestial bodies, you don't also have to fit in the volunteer work you do. If that's not categorically consistent with the answer you hope to provide, then that is certainly enough. Carter, if I didn't answer your question, let me know either in the comments or the Q&A. And that goes for any other question. Okay, Chris, is the essay basically putting everything that wasn't inside the rest of the essay? I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, maybe the question is the essay basically putting everything that wasn't inside the rest of the application? It can be. If there are missing pieces that you think aren't captured by the letters of recommendation or your academic record or your testing or your activities, that you think, hey, the admissions office at this school would not know who I am unless they knew about X, Y, Z, then the essay is a really great opportunity for you to showcase that and for you to bring that topic into the fold. I will also make a plug for the amazing utility of an additional information section. This is much like this last 7th question on the Common App prompts, is a total catch-all. I've seen students use the additional information section in so many different ways. Some students post their resume, some students explain why their education may have been disrupted by extenuating circumstances at home or a health issue they encountered during their high school years. So while I say that the essay could be one piece of the greater puzzle that is your complete application. It doesn't need to be everything that isn't covered by the other application material. So it doesn't need to achieve everything, but if there are some missing things that aren't found in the other parts of an application, definitely consider putting them in your essay. Does prompt number 7 have to be about yourself? Good question. Every single essay you submit has to be in some way about yourself. Now, there's this really old, long-pedaled joke within admissions that if you write about your grandma, we're going to want to admit your grandma. And I think that there is something to that line of thinking. But say you write about something that is in some way separate from you, or it's about someone else, you always want to talk about your connection to that person, topic, or experience, because these essays should always be reflective and they should always be personal. So while prompt number 7 is very vast in its scope, it should definitely, at the end of the day, be personal and authentic to you. What are your thoughts on randomizing the college application process? People with high school diploma can enter a limited number of lottery pools. Plausible? Will it come in the future? Has it been discussed or considered in private colleges such as Yale? Anonymous attendee, that is a great question. I've had so many questions lobbed at me over my years in admissions, and this has never come on my radar. So I actually feel ill-equipped to answer this. But I'll think about it and reach out to my office in a couple of weeks, and hopefully I'll have an answer to you. So fortunately, my answer is more of a non-answer because I'll have to ruminate on this idea. Okay, are essays typically written in a narrative or an interview style? When it comes to certain stylistic decisions that depart from a typical personal narrative, like say an interview style, one wants to be careful that they're using that style in a way that amplifies the message being conveyed and not taking away from the substance of the actual essay. And what I mean by that is I've seen acrostic poems that have been really creative attempts, but at the end of it, I'm like, I really just wish this were a standard essay or a typical essay, because this was more cutesy than it was informative or substantive. Now, I've read a number of other types of essay styles that have actually been quite good, and they depart from the norm, but only when that those essays still give me some insight into who that person is. So yeah, if it's interview style, but you still feel like you can achieve and maintain your own personal voice, go ahead. I am going to try to, I'm weary of time. So, I mean, I have like 15 more minutes in case anyone wants to stick around, and I'll do my darndest to answer the rest of the questions. Okay, would it work to write the essay as if you were talking to the reader? That's another stylistic choice that I think a few students have employed to various success. I have read really good essays that are letters to a person or letters to the admissions reader. It could work, but again, you don't want the style of your response overshadow the integrity of its content. So I would only do so if you think your message can still come across loudly and clearly, and not have the reader think, oh, well, that was just a pretty gimmicky way to write a personal essay. There needs to be a really good rhetorical reason as to why you employed that style. Will Oh, will we be able to access a recorded version of this webinar later? I think so. I think you should reach out to your college counselors or the folks within your district, and I think there will be a recording available. Yes. Daisy asked, can the topic of your essay that you choose be an idea that somehow relates to you, such as a strong belief you've been raised with? Absolutely. I think that can make for an amazing essay. And a number of these Common App prompts, at least, definitely touch on different ideas that may be on your radar and that you may want to put center stage in your college essay. So yes, my short answer to that is yes, Daisy. What are your thoughts about using a metaphor as a glue for the Common App? I think a lot of my answers are going to be, it depends. And I've already been hearing myself kind of repeat the same message. If it's done well, it can work. But if it's a cutesy gimmick that you're trying to employ in order to stand out, I would just write a more standard personal narrative. And I should have said this earlier, this college application process shouldn't necessarily be about what helps you stand out, but rather how are you going to communicate your most authentic self? Because when people try to stand out, sometimes certain gimmicks or strategies that are off the norm can, like I said, overshadow the actual person behind the essay. If an extended metaphor works for you, then definitely employ it, and it'll be a creative strategy that we will love to read in order to learn more about you. Would you recommend writing a new essay or revising an old essay if possible to answer the prompts? Since some of these prompts are really general, I think it's totally okay to rework one piece for several different applications, as long as you are always answering the prompt that is provided to you. There are some cases in which I'm like, I can just tell the student wrote this essay for another school and they're trying to like squeeze it as into a response for Yale. So in those cases, if certain modifications haven't been presented or demonstrated, then I'm like, oh, this definitely doesn't work. But then there are other instances in which, no, a student has actually reformed and reformulated their response in order to fit the Yale response, that I think totally works. So yes, you can use one piece for several different applications, and I think it's good. So good question, Alexander. And save yourself time by doing so. What are some characteristics of the best essays you have read? 3 bullet points. All of the best essays I've read have always been thoughtful, reflective, and they've always conveyed the student's voice. As long as you achieve those 3 things, I can assure you, you are doing a really good job submitting an essay that will do you justice. How important is the Common App essay compared to supplementals? All essay responses are important, and every single piece of every single application is really important because they are all pieces to a greater puzzle. Now, specifically when it comes to the Common App essay versus the supplemental responses, the biggest difference oftentimes is the length and the word count and the number of characters you are allotted. So because the Common App essay tends to give you the most space, its importance can be giving you the bandwidth to reflect as deeply as you see fit, versus at Yale, we have short take responses, and at many schools, there are smaller essay responses that are asked. And so we don't need those responses to carry the same level of detail as the personal statement or the Common App essay does. So I would say take every single essay prompt, be it the personal statement in the Common App or any of the supplementary essays, at face value. Always answer that question and don't lose sleep over the word count, although abide by the restrictions, because the schools are signaling to you the level of effort you should put into the various responses that have various lengths and requirements. Should these essays be structured in a particular way? Should it have a conclusion? It depends. I don't think you need to have, you need to follow the 5-paragraph formulaic essay structure, and that you have an introduction, 3 supporting paragraphs, and then a conclusion. But all essays should definitely have a bulk of it being analysis and reflection, because that's what makes the application essay really come to life. So structure it in whatever way you think helps you tell your story and share your voice. But no matter structure you choose, it should always have very ample reflection included.
Hi, Julian. I want to be sure you're aware of your time.
Okay.
So you let us know, okay?
Okay. Okay. I'm just going to answer really quickly the last couple of questions. If you have a writing style that sounds very formal and that's just how you usually write, will that come across as inauthentic? And will it work against you to write about a quirky talent or interest? No, if you're really formal, then write with whatever voice you think sounds like you. If you give your essay to someone who knows you really well and they read it and they say, oh yeah, that's totally you, like I am meeting the same person I know in real life, then you are capturing the appropriate voice. It will not come across as inauthentic, because you also need to keep in mind, if you're a really formal person, if you are methodical in your thinking and that comes across in your essays, that could also complement some of the commentary provided by the recommendations. You might have letters of recommendation submitted on your behalf that also describe you as a pretty formal person with pretty methodical thinking. So no, I wouldn't be very self-conscious about how you come across as long as you're being authentic. If you think and speak in a formal tone, oh, okay, yes, you totally can answer that question. How do you know you found the perfect topic? Jane, I don't think there are perfect topics out there. I think that there are better topics than some, depending on the person and their own individual qualities. That said, when I was exploring different schools, in some instances, I decided which schools to apply to after reading their supplemental essay prompts and realizing that for myself, I was really excited to answer certain essays over others. There were some schools that I was like, oh my goodness, this is such an interesting question to ask. And so what does that communicate about the school? What values exist within the school that are reflected by the questions they ask of their applicants? So no, I wouldn't say there's any perfect topic, but you should probably be energized by answering certain prompts over others. And that's when you know that you have found an essay that aligns with who you are, and that could help you come across most authentically to any of the essay readers. Some schools exclude supplements. You only submit the single essay. If this is the case, should you approach the question differently, as it's the only one and only written insight of who you are? Yeah, I think the opportunity to submit a personal statement alone versus submitting a Common App essay alongside supplemental essays could definitely impact your approach to that one personal essay. Not because it needs to do all of the heavy lifting, but because there may be certain things that you want to communicate that you could decide, oh, I'm going to talk about this topic in another way in one of my supplemental essays. But if you have only one essay at your disposal, maybe you decide to package a little bit more into that one written response. Should the topic you choose for the essay be related to what you plan on studying or majoring in? Most schools will give you opportunities to describe why you're interested in certain majors. There are some schools that you apply to just a liberal arts college, so you're not applying to any specific major or program, and other schools still where they're asking, why are you applying to our engineering school? Why do you want to pursue marketing? So in those cases, you definitely want your essay responses to signal to the admissions reader a fit for that program or institution. But unless the question is asking about your major, you don't necessarily need to communicate what you plan on studying, because most students at most liberal arts colleges and universities are going to change their mind about what they just declare as a major. And we have a couple more. Any suggestions on how to improve an okay essay? I have all my ideas on paper, but it's missing something. How do I make my okay essay a great essay? I think you make it that much more personal. I think you find different specific elements of your greater topic that will draw you in greater relief, that makes the essay sound a little bit more like you and you alone. I think that's how you take your essay to the next level. Also, the level of detail and vivid language employed, that can help amplify your writing in a way that makes it a little bit more sophisticated without necessarily trying to write in a way that's inauthentic to you. Oh, okay, and the last question I'll answer. If you write your personal essay about your personal reflections and your passion, do you also have to include what you would bring to the table for these universities? No, I think if you choose for yourself the confines and the parameters of your essays, you don't need to worry about answering what you bring to the table, because admissions officers are able to discern that for themselves by looking at your activities list, by reading about you in the letters of recommendation, and by seeing what you bring to the table academically in terms of your academic achievements on your transcripts and other records. And I think that's it. I hope you found this helpful. The folks within your school district have my contact information. If you would like to ask me any other questions, you should feel free to reach out. I'm going to put in the chat my email address, just so you know how to get in contact with me. But the mere fact that you engaged a program like this, I think, speaks wonders about the kind of commitment you all are putting toward your essay writing process in this what can very well be a very circuitous and tricky to navigate college application process. But I hope these insights will help give you some greater direction as you decide to showcase yourself in these written forms. Thank you so much for including me.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Of course.
We appreciate all that you do for our school and our school district. You guys take care of yourselves on that end of the coast, and we will be in touch, okay?
Okay, thank you, Angela. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
You know, I want to ask you, Julian, before you go, are you guys going to do virtual visits to high schools this year?
We will. We're doing a, morphed approach. We are hosting general information sessions. We also just offer general information sessions and student forums that students can register for themselves on our website. Okay. But then there may be some opportunities to connect with schools specifically. Oh, I am going to add my email address again.
Okay, so we'll be in touch about the more personal one, but I'll make sure we encourage the students to go online to sign up for the bigger events that are coming up.
Yes, exactly. There's a part of our website, I think it's something along the lines of like Connect with Yale or Visit Yale, okay. And you can use that to register for information sessions and student forums.
Okay. You take care now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Julian.